All right, now we're set. Hi, I'm here today with Bill Oberst Jr., horror heavyweight extraordinaire. How are you doing today, Bill?
Michael, I'm really glad to be with you. Thank you, man. Thank you for the distraction from quarantine. How are you doing with it in Chicago?
We're hanging in. Yeah. Um, Chicago is pretty bad with the coronavirus right now. We uh, just yesterday we watched the governor comes on broadcasts every day, talking about the amount of new cases and deaths and such. I believe yesterday there was almost 2,500 new cases in the state and 50 or 60 new deaths. So it's kind of grim, but luckily, we're doing well. None of us have it, so that's a good thing.
Humans are pretty resilient.
Yep. So how are you holding out? You mentioned you're in North Carolina.
Yeah, at the moment, I am in South Carolina with my
South.
family. I wanted to be with them during the pandemic, so I
Yeah.
left Los Angeles intending to be here for just a brief time, but then it became clear that you couldn't, wasn't safe to fly back. So I'm going to stay here until things settle down a little bit. I think LA is going to start to open up in a couple of weeks. Not that there's
Yeah.
any business, film production, television productions kind of stopped dead in its tracks. And so I've been reading, writing. I'm starting to write a book about horror character types and created a
Oh
new
wow.
podcast featuring some Gothic horror stories and
Yeah.
staying safe, taking care of my family, but also using the time to get in touch with things that I've loved for a long time. And if, don't indulge enough in, most of which have to do with horror. I said before for your listeners and your viewers before I started, I said, well, here we are, two old horror kids, because Michael is a friend, and I've known him for years, and we have a lot of the same interests. In fact, I don't know if he'll show you the video of him right now ever, but he's wearing a famous Monsters of Filmland T-shirt.
Yes. I have several of them, but this is
Oh, that is awesome.
the Henry Hull Werewolf of London by Basil Gogos.
That is so. Go-Go's was fantastic.
Yeah.
What an amazing artist. But so Michael and I cut our teeth. Uh, we're the same generation, and we cut our teeth on the same kind of monster lore. And so, yeah, we both have an affection for monsters.
Definitely, definitely. Were you in production on anything before all this started?
No, knock on wood. We had just wrapped Mark Savage's Painkiller, which
Okay.
is that's a sequel to Stress to Kill. And so Painkiller is the story of a guy whose daughter has died of opioid abuse, and nobody's doing anything about it. And he decides he's going to do something about it. And of course, it being a Mark Savage movie, and I'm in it, that involves a lot of mayhem and violence.
Right.
We just wrapped that in Florida, and was getting ready to start another one in New Jersey. And my first hint of trouble was when the New Jersey guy said, "We're having trouble getting a film permit," and then sure enough, yeah, that was it. But
Oh no.
people are starting to get creative again now. I've got 3 scripts this week. I've got people who are saying, we're planning for August, we're planning for September. I've got a horror convention in Philadelphia called Gross Fest that is still says they're still on. So yeah, we'll see.
Well, hopefully we'll get to do all those things again and filming can start up again because come, I don't know, 6 months, 8 months from now, there's going to be a huge gap of time where there are no new movies available.
That's right.
It's going to
I've
be like a dead air time for film and television.
so I started this podcast called Gothic Goodnight with
Right.
it's like a little short goodnight podcast with reading Gothic horror stories. So some of the mail and the messages I've got are from younger people all around the world. Like it's amazing with podcasts; they have listeners on like every continent. It's weird, but they write and they're like, when are we going to get new horror movies? And so I encourage them to write himself, to write and create. And maybe it's an opportunity for the younger generation who has only consumed to start to create.
Right.
Because when you and I were kids, I don't know about you, but I wanted to make, 8mm horror movies. And I was drawing things and writing my own little stories and being creative.
Yeah. I guess if you look at it, the one good thing that hopefully will come from all this is that we will have everybody hopefully is going to be doing some writing during this downtime, and there's going to be a lot of new projects out there.
That's right. And I hope that some of those projects, no knock on the reboots, but I'm really tired of rehashing the same ideas over and over and
Yeah.
remaking and reimagining. The great thing I think about horror, especially in a time like this, is real horror deals with the elephant in the room, which is death, right?
Sure.
And mortality. And that's what true horror can do, is to help us face mortality in all types of story forms so that we can deal with it better in our life. And I hope that some of the horror that comes out of this period is going to be more based in the human psyche and the human soul, and less on, hey, this worked 30 years ago, so let's remake it for the fifth time.
Right. Right. I like you hit the nail on the head. I'm hoping for some more genuine horror stuff that people use their minds to come up with new ideas instead of, like you said, rehashing all the old stuff.
That's right. I'm listening now to a collection of H.P. Lovecraft. Where H.P. Lovecraft did, I think in the 20s and 30s, a couple of essays for Weird Tales magazine recommending all the short horror stories he liked. So I'm listening to those now in audio. Some of them are from the 1800s, things I've never heard, but they're all drawn from their mind and their own experiences. They didn't even have movies then. They were just drawing from the things that scared them. I remember seeing Wes Craven at the Egyptian Theater. He did a retrospective a few years back on the Friday the 13th movies. And he was saying that the idea for Friday the 13th came from a friend of his who came back from the Korean War, really traumatized, and died in his sleep. And that's where the idea came from. And that's the kind of stuff that we should be creating, right? Stuff that comes from,
Yeah.
my God, what's going on now is certainly a real life horror. It'll be interesting to see how we deal with it creatively.
Right. Hopefully we won't have 50 COVID-19 movies all at the same time or
And if
more.
we do, I hope they're not just zombie apocalypse movies, because
Right.
I'm really tired of zombie apocalypse. Even before this, people were just in love with the idea that there was going to be a virus that would change all humans into something and we'd eat each other. And that's cool and it's fine, but it's been done so many times, we don't need to do it again.
Yeah, you're right. It has for sure. So let's talk about your Gothic Goodnight podcast. How did all that come about? I've listened to every episode, by the way, and I have to say, I'm simply enthralled by it. Your voice is. I've had to listen to each episode 3 or 4 different times because I keep falling asleep while I'm listening.
Me too. So when I finish each one, I test it by going to bed with it. And if it puts me to sleep and I can't finish it without falling asleep, then I know it works. Because
Well,
that's what I want, is for people to just like drift off and then have to go start it again. I think it's a really cool way to fall asleep, like just listening to something weird.
it really is.
It was coronavirus cabin fever. I thought, okay, I'm going to be here. I've got a home studio here. I've got computer. What can I do? And then I thought about people that are heroes to me, like Vincent Price, who was this great. He was a horror star, but he was also very theatrical and literary. And I thought, what would he do? And I could imagine him saying, hello, welcome to my Gothic library. And I thought,
Right.
oh, that'd be cool. to be set in a. So I just imagine this Gothic library and an old library keeper, and might even try to turn it into a comic. And the other thing I wanted to do besides amuse myself was to expose some of the younger generation to the literary basis for horror. Because the whole Gothic genre, that's where the whole modern day horror cycle of Universal, that's where it began.
Right.
Dracula and Frankenstein, both 19th century literature. Even going back to Nathaniel Hawthorne, Robert Louis Stevenson, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde,
Sure.
the literary basis for it. And I wanted to see how it would sound if you read the stuff out loud. And it puts people to sleep, but it's supposed to, so it's okay.
Each episode, it reminds me of, in the 30s and 40s, when people would, I wasn't there, but I've listened to, I love listening to old time radio shows, especially the horror ones, Lights Out and stuff like that. It reminds me of an old time radio show.
You thrill me. Thank you. Now, see, that's enough encouragement for me to do like 5 more episodes. Thank you. That is exactly the intent. Is the fun, spooky, weird feeling you used to get from Lights Out. Everybody, it is later than you think.
Right.
It was a little scary. It was weird, but it was fun, spooky fun at the same time, without being spooky caricature. Like, that's the fine line, right?
Right.
You don't want it to be. I don't think horror comedies work. I've never liked them, but I do really like slightly tongue-in-cheek horror.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not, what you do is not tongue in cheek at all. It's great. I can't say how much I love it.
Well, I also wanted to get my love of libraries in there, and I don't mean the modern. Michael, I don't know what they've done to libraries, man, but when I was a kid, and maybe you too, when you were growing up, libraries were sort of dark, and they had like corners, and there were like dark corners with old books. The books, some of
Sure.
them were old, and they smelled old. They don't have any of that anymore. Now they're lit up like hospitals.
Yeah.
And I was at one of the LA libraries, and they had this whole beautiful box of old-looking, heavy-bound books. And I said, "What are you doing with them?" And they said, "Well, we donate these." And I said, "What's wrong with them?" She said, "Well, they're old." I said, "Well, but you're a library." And she said, "Well," she said, "I understand what you're saying, but people no longer want anything that's old. And so if a book is old, no one's going to touch it." I was like, "Oh my God."
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah, isn't it?
Wow.
So
How
like,
do
I
you,
imagine a Gothic library full of like books that you have to be careful of, they'll fall apart.
well, the way you describe everything, it transports me when you're talking to your Gothic library with the stone floors and the high vaulted ceilings and the huge windows that let the first rays of the moonlight through.
Yeah. So I imagine that this library, because I'm a child of creepy and eerie, I imagine that this library is up on this precipice, way up high. People look like, what the hell is a library? Who built a library up there? There's like a winding path to get to it, and it's very impractical. There's a big wooden door. You have to bang, bang for admittance. It's only open at night. Yeah, that kind of weird moonlight library that when I was a kid, I would have loved to found a library like that.
Yeah, well, I can picture it in my mind for
Okay.
sure.
That's awesome, man. And that's the kind of horror that I really want to do before I die. I want to do some good atmospheric, and there are some young filmmakers who are really into that style. Heavy atmosphere, not
Yeah.
camp and not comic, but really heavy atmosphere, like you used to get in the original horror movies of the first cycle.
Yeah. Well, hopefully that will happen for you because I would love to see it. Um, how do you decide which selections to read each week?
I started by doing stuff that I personally liked, and then I started asking for suggestions, and people have been sending them to me. and got two people who say they're writing things because I really encourage new stuff. The challenge is finding that there's a lot of stuff that I really like that's too long. I have to find
Right.
stuff that'll fit. I don't want to ever go over 30 minutes, so I'm looking for about a 20-minute read. I did Sleepy Hollow, this most recent one, and I had to edit it down, and every cut
Yes.
was like, oh, I don't want to lose that. But so, yeah, it's stuff that I like, and also suggestions and things that will fit within the format. When I watch a video load or see a podcast load, if it's over 30 minutes, I'm really debating whether to invest that time. So that's why I thought, make it short. Because podcasts have a reputation for just people rattling on. And I wanted to do something that people could just take to bed with them and know it wasn't going to go on forever.
Well, I think 30 minutes is a good time. It's not too short and it's not too long.
I hope
So
so.
that works well.
But you know what? Somebody said, oh, you should make it a Zoom. I was like, dude, I can't. It would just be me talking into the camera. You know, the art is for the ear.
Right.
I don't know if that really plays much anymore. I'm hoping so. But everybody said, oh, you should turn it into like a video. I was like, for me, that would ruin it because it's the imagination of the ear.
Well, for me, just how you speak and how you describe everything, it makes my mind's eye picture it just how you're describing it. And I think video would ruin it.
But you know, we're in a video age. So no matter what it is, everybody's like, oh, put it on video. I do theater, or did theater, and hopefully we'll be able to do theater again when people get able to be back in theaters again. But I've had this over and over. I got this Ray Bradbury solo show portraying him, and I just started doing it when this pandemic hit. And the family doesn't want it filmed, which I can respect. So I have all this publicity material. I've got the script. And over again, I've had people say, oh, do you have a video? Like, no, I don't have a video. And if I did, it wouldn't be the same as watching it. You know, there's some experiences that cannot be zoomed or captured on video.
I agree. Yes. Yes. For each episode, do you rehearse for a while before you do it? Because I like that occasionally you'll voice like an old woman in her voice and things like that. You'll change your voice to
I script it
to an old woman.
because I'm not an ad lib guy. I'm too old to ad lib when I'm on a film, and I'm working with many young people. Sometimes someone will just say, well, let's just ad lib the whole scene, and I'm like, no, I words. So I script out the whole thing and practice it. Yeah. I need to do another crone story because the first one I did was Nathaniel Hawthorne, and it was the crone. Of course, the crone was probably like, what, 47? And, you know, she's probably like a 50-year-old woman. But the traditional crone voice, I really like that. Well, Jerry. You know, and of course the young girl in the story is just like horrified of this hideous crone, which I think is funny too. So my parody of it in my mind is like, what are those? They're called wrinkles, dearie. Ah! You know, the young girl, she starts screaming, and
yeah, it works well. How long does it take you to record each podcast?
About 3.
Because you can tell the brief cutoffs from where you have to stop it, and I'm guessing pause and such.
Yeah, I spend a day recording usually, and I'll do several takes, and then I'll cut together the ones I like the best. And then I spend a full day editing. It takes about, to edit 4 minutes, it takes about 5 hours. So it's like a full, long 12-hour day to edit it. You wouldn't think it would take that long, but when I started doing audiobooks for Audible, I realized how intricate it is to get all the levels synced up and everything.
Yeah,
so, yeah, it's about a 3-day thing, and actually I need to start thinking about this week's episode. But after I do it, It's like a theater performance. When it's finished, I'm like, okay, I never have to do that again. Even if there's a matinee tomorrow, it's helpful psychologically to think, wow, I never have to do that again.
Yeah. Wow, I didn't realize that. I knew it would be involved, but I didn't realize that it took that long.
Because, you want it to be right. Because digitally stuff stays around forever. And I look at Vincent Price's performances of, he did the Cask of Amontillado and one other story. I think it was The Raven together as a theatrical performance. And there are some videos of it that were done. And that particular performance, that one that was taped, it's around forever and it'll be around as long as we have digital. So, when I'm gone, I want the stuff that's left of mine that I can control to be good. A lot of times in film, of course, you take what's handed you and try to do the best you can. But this is something I'm doing, so I wanted it to be an homage to the good horror that I like.
Yeah. You have this, at least for me, you have this uncanny ability to make your listeners feel welcome and at home while they're listening to you. It's almost like it's a safe haven where people belong. People that people like us, monster kids that kids, people that might not belong other places. This is a place where we could all belong, listening to you tell these great Gothic horror stories.
And you're right. That is what I want. I want it to be a place for misfits because I have a heart for misfits because I was one and am one. And I think about Forrest J. Ackerman when I'm doing that. I mean, I know Forey was running a business when he was doing Famous Monsters, but he was also providing a service to weird kids.
Yeah.
Little misfit kids. I couldn't wait for my episode of Famous Monsters. And so, yeah, that's the kind of feeling that I want is when I read that magazine, it was a safe place for people like me. It was my place.
Yeah.
I was in this wonderful world of these people I'd never heard of, like Lon Chaney and Lugosi, and who are they? And it was like this. It was a world for me where I knew that when I opened the pages of Famous Monsters, nobody could hurt me because I was in that world and I had friends in that world, and the monsters were my friends.
Yeah.
So a little bit of that feeling I want in the old library, no matter how old people are, because we all need a place to feel, like we're safe.
Right.
And it's such a fast-paced world, and people want to be accepted, People want somebody to say, I love you, not because you've done anything that is deserving of love, but because you exist and you're a child of God, I love you. And other than preachers, we don't say that much. And certainly in show business, we're not encouraged to say it. So
I hear you.
Yeah, that's why. And I appreciate you giving me a chance to say that now, even by asking the question, because a lot of times in interviews, like what we're doing now, it's not considered entertaining because it's not glib and funny and fast. So I'm guilty a lot of times of being too heartfelt and too sincere. And people who do PR for a living say, oh, no, you'll never go viral that way. And they're probably right.
Don't change who you are. Not at all. So can we switch gears just for a minute and let's talk about Ray Bradbury. You had mentioned before you've done several one-man performances where you take on the persona of Ray Bradbury, the Ray Bradbury Live, the Pillar of Fire.
That's right.
And those you've received awards and incredible accolades from those performances. What is it about Ray Bradbury to you that made you want to do these?
Well, along with Forey Ackerman, Ray saved my life when I was a kid because I was different in about every way that you could be different in a little town in South Carolina. And when I discovered Ray Bradbury, it was not only the world that he created, the science fiction and the weird worlds and weird tales, but the way he wrote, the way he could put words together and make me be in another place just by reading words. I was fascinated by that. How did he do that? And I used to try to dissect his sentences and think, how do you just put words together and change a person's reality? So he influenced me very, very deeply and gave me great pleasure and acceptance as a child. And when he died, I was in LA, and I always said, if I'm in LA when Ray Bradbury dies, I'm going to the memorial service. But I was shooting a movie in Mexico when he died, and I wasn't able to go. So they had a memorial service in Waukegan, his hometown, right? So I wrote to the organizers and said, you know, you don't know me, I'm nobody, but I really love Ray. And if you have any opportunity for people to come and speak, I would love to be there. So they said, would you come and do some kind of performance? So I decided to read from my favorite Bradbury's piece as a boy. It was called Pillar of Fire, a novella, first appeared in the book S is for Space. And I read it on stage at the Genesee Theater in Waukegan, which is where Ray saw Phantom of the Opera and Hunchback. And so it was real special. And I loved doing it so much that I contacted his estate and licensed Pillar of Fire to start touring it as a theatrical reading, and did it here and did it in Germany. And then I got the bug to try to play Ray himself, even though I don't look anything like him. I just got tired of waiting for somebody to play him. And I licensed a performance with his family and his estate to perform as Ray, all in his own words. And so that's what I've been doing. We debuted it in LA and had done about a dozen performances in various places before the coronavirus came. But, you know, Ray was, he was exuberant. And he would say, you know, talking about libraries, and I have this in the show. He would say, I can't stand people who have reading, to hell with reading lists. I can't stand reading lists. They ruin everything. You want to use a library? Here's what you do. You go to the book, you take down the book, you open it, and you fall in love. My God, I've fallen in love. If you don't fall in love, bam, shut that book, put it back on the shelf, pull down another one, and see if you fall in love. You can only go with loves in this life. And that's the only way to use a library. If anybody else tells you anything different, to hell with them. Ray is so exuberant that playing him on stage is exhausting, Michael. It's exhausting because, and the audience, by the end of it, they are exhausted in a good way, because he just assaults you with this positive energy. Ray, if you told Ray, I can't do that, he would say, you don't know what you could do. You haven't done it yet. And he's right. That's the thing about all of his exuberance is he's right. He did so much in his life by just getting up and doing it. And he taught himself to write. He had no college education. He taught himself in the library, and he learned in the library and graduated himself from the library by just reading what he wanted, what he loved. It's a remarkable story to me that he's not this high-minded author who was schooled in all of the right. He was schooled in none of the right schools. His family was on public assistance at times. He was the most unlikely person to ever make a bestseller list. And he did it. And he just did it by work and love. And reconnecting with him has been one of the best parts about this phase of my career. It's been a great joy, a love.
I can imagine he is one of the masters. And I have to say, anytime I listen to something that Ray Bradbury has narrated, I've always said his voice is so soothing and so wonderful to listen to. For example, the Halloween Tree, the animated special based on his book. Just listening to him narrate that, his talking, it almost puts me to sleep like your voice does.
He had that Midwestern accent, and he would ask for encouragement to say, Michael, you could only go with loves in this life, huh? the little Hans and the little Hans and huh. Yeah, I love the rhythms of his voice too. God rest Ray. I'm glad I never met him, because if I had met him, I would not have the kahunas to try to play him. And, I'm very fearful that when I finally get to heaven that he'll say, "What the hell did you think you were doing?" But maybe not.
Well, Bill,
If I can play Lincoln and I'm only 5'9", then yeah, I figured, why not give it a shot? You get the essence of a person across.
Yeah.
You don't have to duplicate them. That's my philosophy.
Yeah, what a kick-ass Lincoln you played.
I love being Lincoln.
Yeah.
When I got on set, they had a previous Lincoln who was like 6'5". My God, he was magnificent looking. Something went wrong, and some disagreement, and he was gone. And so I had a call from David Latt, who's one of the owners of the asylum.
Yes.
Late at night, like 11 o'clock. And I'm glad I answered my phone. And David said, can you get on a plane and come to Savannah, Georgia and play Abraham Lincoln for 3 weeks? And I said, I'm 5'9". And he said, we'll put you on a box. It's fine. And I said, I haven't seen the script. And he said, you can learn it on the plane. I said, okay. So he called my manager, and the next day I got on a plane and went to Savannah. So I showed up, and there's the director, Richard Shinkman, and who had not expected to lose his previous Lincoln. And my little self shows up, and he said, "You're the new Lincoln?" I said, "Yes." He said, "God help us." It was one of the best opening director comments I ever got was, "God help us." But luckily, he got me some elevator shoes, and he wanted me to play the real Lincoln. Like he said, I want the Lincoln on the penny, the authentic Lincoln, as if he were fighting zombies. So that's what we did, because Lincoln was a great hero of mine, and I knew I'd never get another chance to play him again, so gave it everything I had.
Well, I still love that movie to this day, Abraham Lincoln versus Zombies. It's just such a fun movie, and you do such a great job in it.
Well, thank you. It was a lot of fun to do.
Yeah. Well, we're running short on time here, Bill. I just want to say I really think you have a hit on your hands with the Gothic Goodnight podcast, and I hope to see it continue for a long time. So I really wish you the best of luck with that. And when things get back to normal, I know you'll be back to your extremely busy and wanted self. So, I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me today and the readers of Horror Patch. I've always felt like we're brothers from another mother.
Me too.
It's just nice to talk to you again.
So I have one question for you.
Sure.
Why don't you write a horror movie script?
I've told myself I'm going to do that since I was probably a young teenager, and it hasn't happened yet.
May I quote Ray Bradbury? You don't know what you could do. You haven't done it yet.
Yep. That's on my list.
I'm waiting for it because you understand horror, brother. You get it. I want you to write something.
One of these days.
All right. Thank you, man. This has been a pleasure.
Well, thank you so much, Bill. I really appreciate it, and good luck with everything. And stay safe.
You too. God bless you, brother.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, man. Bye.
Bye.